So I go down to my workshop this morning into the little room where I keep all sorts of extra odds and ends. And I got my tape measure in hand, and I know what the shortest the piece of plywood that I need can be. And I found this one here, and as it turns out, the length you see of this piece of plywood is exactly what it was. I didn't have to cut it, except it was 2 feet wide. But the length was within, well, if it had been 1/4 of an inch shorter, it would have been too short. It just fits. Talk about a coincidence. And pretty much this was about the only piece of plywood that I had that would have been really, really perfect. And another coincidence I had last night. I got an email from a friend of mine who lives here in Winnipeg, and he sends me a link to a YouTube video that he had recently seen on the Bismarck, and he thought I'd like to see it. So I click on it, and don't you know, it was a video that I was watching while YouTube was processing the video that you saw yesterday. Another coincidence. You know, I'm thinking maybe I should go out and buy a lottery ticket. Okay, I've got bubble wrap everywhere and foam padding on the ends here. I don't think there's anywhere that the hull can actually be touching wood. And this is the first time I've tried it, so it should work. Yeah, that's going to be alright. And what I can do is I can always pick it up by the ends if I have to move it around. Yeah, and the plywood is slightly wider than the hull, so if I was to take this and, you know, pick it up and bang it into something, the plywood should hit before the hull does. I mean, that's the whole idea. Keep the paint from getting scratched, as I say, worse than it already is. Okay, let's see if we can get this deck glued on here now. Okay, so you're probably wondering, why do I not have it in the new little cradle that I just made up? Well, the reason being is because I have to spread the hull just slightly to get the deck in, and it's a little bit easier to do it when I don't have those uprights pressing in on it, even though they're not pressing very hard. Now, I think I've mentioned this at least twice before, but the fit of this deck in this hull is absolutely superb. And I'm not the only one that has, noticed that, because I've seen on YouTube where other people are talking about this particular kit, and not only this particular model, but other kits from Trumpeter, and they say that the fit is just phenomenal, and it is. You just can't believe it. It almost it almost doesn't have to be glued. I think if I was to glue it here, the rest would probably just stay there by itself. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to gently spread it and put a little bit of the solvent glue in and let the plastic sort of weld itself together. Now, I sure hope that there's nothing else I have to put on the inside, because once it's in, it's in. You can see I've taken the deck off again. And you can see there's a little bit of you might call it a ledge, all the way along the inside of the hull. And I think what I'm going to quickly do is put a very light bead of CA thick all the way around, and then quickly put the deck on and sort of snap it down into place. And if I don't have to fool around with the camera, it shouldn't take too long. So I'm probably not going to show this being done. I'm going to just do a bit of a dry run here just to see how it's going to go. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, go. How fast can I get this in? Without breaking anything, of course. Okay, there, it's in. I didn't time myself, but I'm sure it's probably only about 15 seconds. So if I move quickly, it should work. So the next time we see you, it should be done. Okay, I've changed my mind here. You know, how hard can this be, right? I guess we're probably going to find out it's probably real hard. Okay. And if I happen to miss a little spot, well, I don't think that's going to be the end of the world. The only thing that could happen is if this was to start to solidify before I'm ready. Okay, here we go. Okay, so if I remember right here is where it had difficulty wanting to stay down. And, oh, the back is okay this time. Okay, I think we got it. And I'm starting to be able to smell the CA glue, so I know it's starting to cure, so I made it. Don't want to get any stuck on my thumb anywhere and make a mess of my decking. I did wash my hands, by the way, about 5 minutes ago with soapy water, so I know that I'm not going to be getting a bunch of fingerprints all over our deck tan. Okay. And then I got a little story to tell you. And I know it's going to start out like, what's that got to do with this? Well, when I get to the end of it, you'll see. There's the odd place that I can see where the CA glue has maybe oozed its way up, just very, very slightly, but I don't think it's going to hurt anything. Well, now you know what time it is, 2 o'clock. Well, here's the story. Starting about, I guess, 2 weeks ago, I started having a tune run through my head. And it was a tune from the early 70s from Fiddler on the Roof. You know those happy little tunes? So I couldn't get it out of my head and I ended up Googling it. Well, of course, then a whole bunch of stuff came up. And I was able to watch a few of the songs being sung, you know, the way it was in the movie, and I thought, how does that movie go? I knew I'd seen it way back in the 70s when it first came out in VHS. But I couldn't really fully remember the storyline. But the tunes were happy. And so I'm thinking, okay, let's get myself a feel-good movie here. And I haven't bought or rented a movie for years. So I go on Amazon, and don't you know, it's a really reasonable price. Delivered to the door, I think, in Blu-ray for, I think it was around $11. And and it was in my delivery box within 48 hours of when I clicked add to cart. I mean, brick and mortar stores, they're on their way out, unless you need it right away. Well, bread and milk, you know, they're still gonna stay in business. But anyway, I'm getting off the subject here. So anyway, I get the movie and I start watching it, and of course it's got all the familiar little tunes, and it starts out really happy. And of course, as most of you will remember, it's the story about this guy. He's got 5 daughters. Well, the oldest daughter marries the tailor. Well, that's kind of okay. You know, you kind of like the tailor. He's sort of a likable guy. And second daughter, well, she marries and falls in love with a sort of a, you might say, a revolutionary, radical type guy who gets himself arrested and sent to Siberia. And then she ends up going to Siberia to be with him until he gets out of jail. This is not good. Well, the third daughter, she falls in love with somebody who's of a different faith, and the father disowns her. And I'm thinking, this is not the way I remember this going. Well, it gets worse. They all get kicked out of their village. Well, you know the story, I'm sure. And the scene, the movie ends with them all trudging off down this muddy road to a future that is very uncertain. And then the movie ends, and I'm thinking, I got this movie to cheer myself up. This is a feel-good movie? This movie is sad. So anyway, I'm sitting there watching the TV and the credits rolling by, and I'm thinking about all this, and finally it starts all over again. So I reach over and I shut off the DVD player, and I'm just sitting there and I'm staring at the blank screen because, you know, this is not the way you want it to be. You want it to have like what happened to Fiddler on the Roof Part 2, where they all get together and there's a whole bunch of hugging and happiness and more happy tunes. No. Then I got to thinking, well, that's life. They depicted it exactly the way it is. I mean, the only way it could possibly get worse is if a lot of them tried to immigrate to America and they booked passage on the Titanic. Well, that would be worse. I mean, they may as well have thrown that in. But that's life. Okay, so what's that got to do with this? The way this is going to end up is not necessarily the way we would like it to go. And, you know, we've got places where we've got all this detail here, you know, and I'm sort of shrugging it off and not doing a real good job on it. I'm just leaving it the way it is. Well, that's life. That's the way it's going to go. This is not going to... Life is what happens to you while you're making other plans. And right now my plan for this is I want to have it done in a year. So I've got to keep going here. I got to maybe take shortcuts. I know one of the viewers made a very good suggestion, and he said you take a sharpened toothpick and you can use it to put paint on the very, very small little places, you know. And I have a faint recollection of actually doing that sort of thing a long time ago. I don't want to go to all that work. Yeah. So the way I'm doing this is sort of the way Fiddler on the Roof goes. It's not going to necessarily go the way we want it to go. But that's life. See you tomorrow. Thanks for watching.